My wife came from a family, let's talk socioeconomic status.
Okay.
My wife came from a family that had money because they didn't spend money. They were extreme savers and budgeters. And her father ended up eventually getting into business, buying into his company, and ended up becoming a significant owner there, made really great money with them, and, started making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then even had seven-figure years. So, but they didn't spend money like they had those things. They were always extraordinarily frugal, far more frugal than anyone would be with the amount of money that they had. They represented an extreme case. And so they filled my wife's head with really, good notions, well-intended notions like debt is evil, debt is bad, don't have debt at all costs, no matter what. If you have money, don't spend it, save it, save it. And there's a lot of judgment, I think, that also kind of came with this idea that, money is something that you need to be as careful with as possible. And so my wife brought that to our relationship. My parents came from a similar socioeconomic status, meaning we were probably on the smaller end of, the middle class. But my dad, as a business owner, made a lot of money, but with 9 kids, he spent it all. My mom struggled to manage it. They were always refinancing the house every few years to get out of credit card debt. They never seemed to get ahead. They never seemed to have money in the bank. And my parents fought about money from not having it and from a philosophy of how it was to be managed. So, when Glenn and I kind of came together, I had already made the decision. I do not want to repeat the upbringing of my parents, but I also found myself, frankly, turned off by the alternative of Glenn's parents' upbringing. While it was positive, it also felt limited just to me. Like there was something that still felt off, like, hey, that's a great path for a lot of people, but that's not my path. I'm not intended for that path. And so that meant that, even though we had only been married for a few short years, I started developing some wild, very ambitious notions about investing, making money, financial freedom. All of these thoughts were totally new to my wife. And so what we ended up fighting over, and it was more arguing than anything, was in the beginning, we didn't have money. Mm-hmm. And so, there was a moment that changed everything for me. It was the moment I came home. I'd been married for like 4 months. I had gone into marriage with 10 grand, which I blew on a ring, a brand new $1,500 Justy Subaru 1993 car, and a couple months worth of rent and tuition. And that was it. I ran out. So I got a full-time job right when we got married. And after having that full-time job for 4 months, I was not able to keep us from going into debt. And I remember coming home from work on a fairly discouraging day. I had just found out that month that I wasn't going to be a doctor because I hated chemistry, and I retook my OChem class and I couldn't nail it. I got a C- on my second go round instead of a C. And I finally listened to my advisor that said, this doesn't come natural to you, buddy. This is not your path. So I felt really disheartened by that because I'd planned on that for years. That was my plan to financially be okay. But I also just was having a lousy time at my telemarketing job that I hated. And when I came home on this lunch break, I found my wife in tears. And turns out, yes, it was because rent was due next week and we couldn't pay it. Yes, tuition was due in 3 weeks and we couldn't pay it. But the reason why she was crying is because it was the very first time in her life experiencing a bounced check. Because then we were writing checks and, there were debit cards, but it didn't go through. She was embarrassed. She had it was like $30 a grocery. She was so embarrassed that she left. And we had no food in our house at the time because we only kept 5 days worth of food at a time. And when I came home hours later, my wife was hungry. She was crying because she was hungry, and she was also just mentally blown from having no money. And she was so scared. And in that moment, I made a decision. I don't care what I have to do, as long as it's legal.
Ethical.
I'm going to make sure that I never find myself in this situation again. And that's what got me to buck the system. That's when I said, screw college. Meaning, I'll get my degree. I don't even know if I'll use it. There's so much pressure. At my day and age, college was like you have to or you're an idiot. So I ended up getting my degree, but I knew already then it wasn't for career. It was for a variety of other reasons. And so I put myself through college to get that. I knew that I had to go outside the system. And that's when I basically started finding wealthy people. And I said, show me what you're doing and I will copycat it. And I did, and it worked.